Cyber insurance was a talk of the town during the 2020 COVID pandemic. Yet 4 years later, today, we still see companies struggling to determine its value or what it even is. What does it cover? What does it do? Why do you need it? So today we've invited a guest who is an expert in the industry and who's going to help us uncover these various facts and about what it is, how it works, how it operates. So stick around. Let's get started. Welcome, Matt. Thanks for joining the podcast today. I got to know you, I don't know, about probably a little over a year ago now when we connected at a local event and had a good time and connected. So I thought I'd invite you.
Hit it off right away.
Yeah, I thought so.
And every time we see each other, which isn't enough.
It isn't enough. You're right about that. But I think you got your own growing family. I have my own growing family. It's usually not conducive to a ton of outside events unless it's during the workday.
It's true. It's true. The networking events, it's 5 o'clock, become less and less intriguing as you get older.
Yeah, I usually skip those. If it's like in between before 5 and like in between 8 to 5, okay, we might. But if it's after 5, I usually check out.
Forget about it. Yeah, not happening.
Yeah, so just for everybody else's sake, give me a little background on yourself, personally, professionally, company you work for.
Yeah, so my name is Matt Turman. I'm with Susquehanna Insurance. I was raised in Lancaster and went to Messiah College, went to Township, Manheim Township, and then Messiah College. And then after Messiah, I decided I wanted to spread my wings a little bit, as most of us Lancaster County folk want to do. And I moved to Charlotte and hopped in and got the doors open to a NASCAR career. And so I worked in NASCAR for 3 years with Michael Waltrip Racing. And I was on the pit crew. I was a front tire carrier. And I was in the sales department. So the morning I'd do pit practice and workouts. In the afternoon, I'd be calling CMOs of Fortune 500 companies and trying to convince them to give us $500,000 a race. And then hop on the plane on Thursday, fly to the racetrack, hit race cars all weekend, wine and dine some sponsors, and then fly back and do it all again on Monday.
Was this pre-married life?
It was pre-married life,
Okay, that sounds about right. Okay, it sounds about right. I was like, man, dude, there's no way you're doing this.
No, not a chance. Yeah, this is it's embarrassing, but the divorce rate in NASCAR is like 92%.
You're joking.
No.
Okay, so if you wanted a family.
It'd be tough. You're on the road so much. And so I quickly saw the writing on the wall. I achieved my goals of what I wanted to do. And thought, what's the next step out of racing? Because it's all encompassing. Your weekends are gone. Your friends are in racing. You don't attend weddings. This is what you do. And so I was talking to a company named Dana Incorporated for sponsorship. They make all of the drive shafts, which connect the engine to the rear axle of trucks and vehicles. And they said, hey, man, you want to get out of racing? You think you're a great fit for our sales team. You want to work for us. And so they had an opening here on the East Coast. And so I became the district sales manager for the East Coast for Dana. And so traveled, again, 120 nights a year. But this time during the week.
Okay.
So at least I had my weekends free.
Sure.
Did that for 3 years. And then knew that Susquehanna, my dad started the business in 94, was always there and always an opportunity. Dana's a Fortune 500 in his corporate America. And I experienced that and said, you know what? If I want to be promoted, I got to go to Toledo and move about the country and the world. And I'm like, if I want a family, probably is not the best idea. And I like to make an impact more outside of the red tape of corporate America, where you can own a business, decide who you give to, decide who you benefit, decide who you work with, and benefit your employees. And I said, that sounds great.
Dude, you got like a breadth of experience of like from big Fortune 500 companies, like you just said, to working like in an entertainment, sports, to now obviously a family business. So you're like all over the place.
Yeah, I know. And I've had to learn 3 different industries. Usually you get into one and you become an expert. Yeah. And so it was entertainment and sports and marketing, with what's your CPM and all these different metrics you can sell, to then truck parts, which I knew nothing about and really didn't care to. And now how to learn insurance. So hopefully this is my last one. I'm good. I've tapped out. I learn every day in insurance, like cyber, but hopefully this is the last industry I need to learn and dive into.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
It's been a fun career though.
So like Susquehanna, give me the quick rundown. Your dad started this business. You obviously you joined it. What's your niche? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so Susquehanna our name is meant to be kind of, it bridges the gap between York and Lancaster initially, because it's the Susquehanna River. And My dad and uncle started it, and we've grown now to 2 locations with 10 employees and another one soon. And we specialize in middle to low to smaller size businesses. So anything from your local landscape guy or painter up to a company that's pushing, a few $100 million in sales
that's awesome.
in revenue a year. And so we kind of bridge that gap. We're more commercial based. Of course, we do the home, auto, life insurance umbrella that you can get, but we have always been more focused on the commercial side of things. Yeah. So our split's probably 70% commercial, 30% personal lines. Okay. And it's been fun to work with small business owners and entrepreneurs that start their business, and we watch them grow. We had one last week that was a franchise. The guy started in Lancaster, and now, his initial premium was maybe $5,000 for an auto, for a truck, and maybe an employee. And now he's paying over almost $200,000 a year in premium because his business has just grown like crazy.
Wow.
So those fun success stories that you walk with them the whole time has been fun to see.
Yeah, and clearly they value you, and you must have provided some sort of value, or else they wouldn't have walked with you during that whole time as they're growing.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Insurance is boring, man. People are like, I don't want to buy insurance. This is the worst. You buy it, and then when you got to use it, you can't use it. They decline your claim.
Yeah.
But we want to be there. We think it's cool, almost like a ministry thing. What other business can you be into, maybe besides IT? Yeah. That when something happens, you can stand in the gap with your client, with the person you're representing, and help them restore their life or their business to where it was pre-loss. So terrible car accident, we'll help you get fixed back up and a new car back to where you were before. Your business is on fire, same thing. We'll get you fixed back up.
That's awesome. So your career, you've had a breadth of experience in businesses. Now in Susquehanna, you guys obviously are going from a breadth of sizes of business. And I think that's going to be important for our conversation. We're trying to wrap this conversation around cyber insurance, which I think will be an interesting conversation because I think it's a pretty hot topic, at least within the business world, and at least as insurance, I think goes, it's certainly a hot topic. So with that being said, what the heck is cyber insurance?
What the heck is cyber?
Yeah.
Cyber, I was thinking the way here even, it's cool to live through almost the life cycle of a new insurance product. Because auto insurance has been around since the dawn of time. Liability, underwriting, it was essentially, we call it inland marine coverage is what it is still coined, which is kind of a dumb term. And that's because insurance was made for ships. So inland marine was all of your things that are not on the boat. And now it's still covered. So your excavator or your tractor, whatever, is inland marine.
Oh, that's
what? So now cyber is this new thing.
Yeah.
That it's fun to be a part of it because each week is evolving to something new, which is good and bad. It keeps you on your toes, but it's tough to fight the enemy that's invisible almost. We can look back, if we want to insure this building, we can go back and see trends of this location, geographical area, type of building, is it sprinklered, square foot, and come on a pretty good idea of here's the premium that must be charged to get the risk associated with it.
Right.
And in cyber, that's very hard to do. They're getting better at it, but it's still tough. So it started in early 2000s, believe it or not. It's been around for almost 20 some years. People don't realize that. It really got hot in 2016 on, 2018.
Yeah.
Home Depot had a breach, and some of these larger corporations started having these data breaches. And 2019 hit, and it really started to pick up. And then 2020, and they just threw gasoline on the fire with cyber insurance. So cyber insurance is a part of the property and casualty aspect of insurance. And it is essentially internet liability. Okay. And so as you operate a business, you have a lot of it is done online and you have exposures there. And so how do you protect that aspect of things that's not a tangible asset to provide coverage for? So
not a tangible asset against an invisible enemy.
There you go. Cyber insurance. Here
no
we
wonder
go.
people are confused about it.
No wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's been an interesting time. In 2019 and before that, it was really hard to sell cyber insurance because people didn't really know what it was. Come 2021, it was really hard to buy it because insurance companies were getting wrecked with 2020. Everybody went home during COVID. And so they had a heyday, these hackers did, with people phishing emails and wire transfer and all this stuff. And so it became very tough to buy it. And the premiums, 10, 20, 30 times in premium from year-over-year renewals.
Oh my goodness.
Because of just the risk was crazy.
And it didn't matter what business size it was.
Didn't matter. Of course, the larger ones saw a larger, proportion, but come 2024, it's kind of even back out almost too quickly, the industry thinks, because now they saw that the premiums are now associated appropriately, if not a little inflated. And so more insurance companies and carriers stepped in and said, we'll provide this. So initially it was, low demand for this. And now we don't want to write this. Everybody floods the market and says, we'll write it for you. Just pay us the right premium. Yeah. So now the price has come back down.
Okay.
So it's kind of evened out. We're hoping it stays there because we think the pricing is probably adequate now for the risk, but that could change next week.
So out of all your commercial clients, because obviously this is more of a commercial issue than it is a residential issue. I don't even know can residents even buy cyber insurance?
You have on your homeowners as a portion.
Oh, really?
Of small things.
Okay.
So your computer gets hacked and they steal some sensitive something.
I see.
Or your computer gets bricked.
Okay.
You have coverage with a lower deductible for some, depending on your insurance company. Caveat everything from this conversation is carrier dependent and is not applicable to all insurance policies. But
so it is possible a piece of it's interpersonal, but you almost need to just double check to see exactly what the
look through your declarations page.
Sure. Yeah. Totally know what that is.
It's when they mail that stuff to you each year, and it's like that huge packet of papers. You're like, I don't need this. Throw it out.
Yeah,
that's what that is.
Okay, that makes total sense. So out of all your commercial clients, how many are really percentage wise do you think actually buy into cyber insurance and pay that?
I would say a minority.
Really?
Excuse me, but it's growing. So now your primary carriers are adding a small endorsement where we'll give you $15,000.
I see.
We'll give you a throw in. So in case something happens here, we'll give you a little bit, you're about your way.
I see.
We're talking separately an actual cyber policy of millions of coverage, of liability for a cyber policy. It's growing, but it's still the minority of our book of business.
What's that biggest hindrance? Is that intangible things with invisible threats? Is that still kind of the main barrier, or what is that?
I would say people don't think they need it, or they might not know about it, and then they think it's too expensive. It's probably along your line of business. Hey, we can provide all these services, but I don't need it because, that's too expensive. There's no way I could afford that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So those are probably the biggest hindrances, and it's just walking through with them. Like, for example, you have a manufacturing company, and they're like, well, I don't have any data here. I don't have your credit card information. There's no risk for me to have a cyber claim.
Yeah.
That's how they think about it. Then you say, okay, Mr. Owner, what if your machine goes down and you can't make your widgets for 2 months while you're held ransom? And they want $1 million in ransom. It's like, well, that's a cyber policy. That's what that steps in and pays for you. And so you talk about their uptime, the downtime, and what the difference is, and income protection is a big aspect of these cyber policies.
Okay, that makes total sense. I understand why people kind of struggle with that concept, and maybe why they don't think they're liable, or even how it's pertinent to them.
Yeah,
makes a lot of sense. So, with that, so the insurance companies are getting better at evaluating these policies. So how do they? Let me see. How do I want to word this question? How are they? What kind of risks are they looking at? So insurance companies look at, I'm a random manufacturer, like you used earlier. I want to come in there. I want to get cyber insurance. What kind of risks are you looking at as an insurance company to provide me with coverage?
Like when we underwrite you, say, what is it about your business that we're going to use to figure out a rate? Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. So the biggest one is what industry you're in. So if you're a manufacturer, that is one aspect of it, versus a hospital is a whole different aspect. So that's the first that kind of puts you in a bucket based off what your industry is.
Okay.
And then it's based off of revenue, so how big you are. And then another aspect is how many employees you have. And so it just kind of dials in from there. And then the better you do with IT services, do you handle all your IT in-house yourself? Do you have somebody that handles it for you? Do you have the old MFA? Without MFA, you're not getting much in cyber insurance-wise these days. So you must have that. Do you have remote access? All of these different kind of layers that go into it that then determine how much your rate will be for a policy. That's how they determine it.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I would say too, we filled out a lot of cyber insurance forms, or helped customers fill out cyber insurance forms. And they're all over the place. Like the questions that were being asked. I mean, one carrier or one provider would just, it's maybe like 10, 15 questions at most. The next one, it feels like we're spending like a week answering these questions, and it's like 100 of questions, and it's wild. Like,
is it different industries? Have you seen that? Is that why, or is it this similar type?
It feels like it's so different across the board. Like, we handle a lot of like one industry. Manufacturing specifically is where a lot of our customers are aligned, although we're in many industries. But it does feel like it almost depends on the provider. Yeah. And every once in a while, we'll run across the same provider, and like obviously we're used to them, and we can just kind of ram through everything. But it is really unique. It does feel like they're still feeling out the market and getting in. I would say the people that are asking more questions, it does feel like they're understanding their risk from an IT and cyber perspective a little bit differently than those that don't ask many questions.
Yeah. And that the saying is, if you've seen one cyber insurance policy, you've seen one cyber insurance policy, because they're not the same. Every single one, between carriers and type of business, they're all worded so differently. And depending what the key of that type of business is what the coverage is going to stand on. The old days of, hey, give me a GL policy, $1 million is going to cover me as I go out and do my painting as a sole prop, That's not really a thing in cyber insurance. Yeah. They're all crafted so different. So there's to break it down a little bit, you got first party, third party, and then another big one we like to talk about is income protection. So first party is things for you. So you have a data breach, who this cyber policy comes in and pays for legal, pays for forensics, pays for all of the different types of people, the IT service folks that need to come in and close the door, lock it up, clean it out, make sure everything's okay, and then get it handled. So all the things that you will pay and you have seen damage for. Third party are things that are caused to people that you do business with, your employees, your customers, your vendors, folks like that. Will pay any fines, legal issues, stuff like that for third party. And then income protection is a big one for manufacturers. Like we talked about earlier, if your machine goes down, then what's your loss of income there? And so if you're locked up for a period of time, how much are you losing? You're not able to be online. You're not able to send emails or work machines or whatever it might be. So you can step in once that event occurs. The deductible is typically a time-based thing. Then that time kicks in, and they pay out what you lost in income, which is a big deal. And so when you're working through it, also it's important to work with an IT service provider and an agent that sees the full scope of your business, not just hey, I got a cyber guy that does that for me, because it's going to all kind of blend in, where your property and casualty, your property for your building, and then your E&O aspects, and then your D&O if you have that, and then your cyber all needs to plug in and fit nicely together, because there's some gray areas that is this E&O, errors and omissions, or is this cyber? Where does this kind of fall? So as we figure it out and the companies work together, you need a good IT service provider and people to be on your team to help you.
And so when you think about IT services, and like obviously I think you listed off a couple big ones earlier. If you don't have MFA, if you have remote access, I think you even rattle off another one in between there. But those are some of the big questions. It seems like they're asked everywhere. But even beyond that, one of the things that we find is that as we get into different companies is that pretty much everybody is doing or attempting to do these things. And so then, like for us, what we're starting to see is like it's not so much about the tools being used, it's about like the whole process behind what happens and how are you implementing this technology. Because one thing that we found is, and actually we found it, but I'm sure you guys have seen it, is over the past couple of years as this stuff has become more and more, as people work to understand it better, technology changes really quick. And so how cyber criminals go around and infiltrate these different places, it does create a whole process issue.
It does. And that's why it's so important. We advocate for people to use our customers to use IT service folks, because you need to have a team around you. There's so much that goes on. And if you don't have somebody holding your hand through these things, you're going to be exposed to a large claim, a large breach, something along those lines. And so it's key to have the right folks around you, because if you're in manufacturing, That's what you're good at. You're not good necessarily at IT. You might hire somebody that helps you do that, but it's not your main thing. Yeah. And so it's helpful to build a team around you that can make sure they're there for the good times, and then when something does go south, for the bad times too.
Those are usually not fun, but they can be very like rewarding in a sense of just building community, because I will say we've been involved in one or two where certain recommendations weren't taken, and then something did end up happening. It's usually some really good community building time, or it can be. I know it's pretty stressful for companies when they're going through that whole process, but it is really interesting. Another thing I actually wanted to mention is, as I'm thinking about the whole idea of cyber risk, one of the things I actually think about that insurance companies actually have no control over, and this is something I learned while in the midst of a breach, is that if the threat actor actually, that's what we call those people, if their threat actors actually come back from a country such as Iran, Russia, or any other countries like North Korea that the U.S. has an embargo with, you can't actually pay that out.
No way.
Yeah. So like a lot of times what it comes down to is like, ransomware threat actors will actually give you the keys. Over 75% of the time, they'll actually give you the right keys, and the payout actually works. But if it comes from a country that the United States specifically says you cannot transact in, period, no matter what it is, and they find that out, like that's actually an illegal act.
No way.
Yeah. So even if you think about insurance, you think about IT, like those are some factors in play too.
Yeah.
You hear about North Korea threat actors and what they're doing in different companies. So if the FBI comes in and finds, hey, you gave money for ransomware to North Korea, that you can actually be liable for big lawsuits on it's a federal offense.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that you don't necessarily know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And like one we've run into and the insurance companies are getting now wise to is, like, well, what about Bitcoin? It's blockchain stuff. We'll pay it in US dollars or whatever currency, but we're not going to go in Bitcoin. Of course, they want Bitcoin because it's secure. So yes, it's just crazy how you get something happens and you don't realize the ramifications until you're in the midst of one.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man. Yeah.
So when you think about, have you filled cyber insurance policies, like in a sense of somebody got hit and you had to fill out?
We have.
Does it matter to the size of company? Because that's one thing I hear a lot.
No.
So you've had to fill out small companies, even if they weren't paying for it specifically, you've had to fill it out.
Yeah. I mean, it's the cyber criminals they don't care, and the smaller the company, almost the easier target it is because they don't have the stuff in place to really protect them, or they haven't installed the latest upgrade or update. And so they're kind of a sitting duck almost. And so they say that, I forget, you're 80% more likely to have a cyber claim than a property and casualty like fire, wind, hail, something to your business or building.
And people will pay that out pretty quick.
Yeah, totally. And so, people don't fully, they think I'm either too small or I'm not the best, and then something happens and it can be, I mean, you name it. We had our conversation, talked about the bad actors where they come in and they pose as another employee of the business and then wire money out.
Yeah.
And they do it, and it's a bad day.
So talk a little bit more about that, because that is very common as an employee, a coworker,
you guys have seen that
vendor,
too?
all over the place.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be a compromise in our customers. They could just get confused because whoever they're working with was compromised, and it is coming from a legitimate source that got compromised, or it looks like a legitimate source even if it's not.
Yeah.
That happens a lot.
It is. And then even play in the AI aspect now with that as well, because before, typically these folks are not native English speakers, and so you can tell that in their emails. But nowadays with AI, it makes it way tougher. So we had a client recently that they were contacted about an invoice from a legitimate vendor they've used before.
Yeah.
And they emailed back and had a question about that particular invoice and said, what about this? And they responded back in a tone that was acceptable. And they said, okay, what about that? They sent 2 questions back to this scammer, and they answered them fine and came back and they wired out over $100,000 to this account, thinking it was their vendor. And they called and said, hey, we never got paid. Where's our payment? And they said, what do you mean? We did it on this date for this amount. And they said, that wasn't us.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit more about that. Is that covered under cyber insurance?
It would be, yeah. This particular client did not have the policy. They had a smaller ancillary one, but they did not. They rejected the cyber policy off the bat. And so that would be, you bring in the forensic folks, they figured out what exactly happened, and that would be a claim under cyber policy.
Yeah. It is one of the most frustrating, whenever that happens, especially when it's on the other side, it is frustrating, I find, for us to work through that whole process, because as we kind of button everything up, it's really usually a stressful time and people are really pointing fingers a lot of times.
Yeah.
But this is where it's understanding the whole process of how IT and cyber, how insurance providers really work together. I think there's a lot of crossover there, and I don't think people realize how good it is to have really solid professional relationships there.
Totally. Yeah. I got a question for you.
Hit me with it.
One thing that we have been thinking about, and the industry has in general, we are in 2024 in the world of efficiency. If you listen to any podcasts or consultants, it's efficiency.
100%.
And now I think we've almost crested that hill where now efficiency is at the crossroads with security. And we're seeing that on the cybersecurity side of things.
Yeah.
I'm sure you are, where you can be so efficient, but now if you need MFA to get into at all email aspects, it can be a royal pain, and people hate it and they don't like it.
Yep.
And so efficiency is almost no longer the priority, but if it is, then security gets compromised. So how do you guys handle?
They seem combative, don't they?
They do.
They seem like they're constantly fighting each other for supremacy.
Yeah. It's like, who do you prioritize?
Yes. So the really stupid, easy answer to that is both.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that a lot of people think that security needs to be a big hindrance, and don't get me wrong, it certainly can be. And what we find out is as we're working through this process of setting up security, it definitely creates a lull in efficiency, almost always, especially with modern security technology. It's pretty incredible how you can actually implement a lot of these ideas and lose little to zero time.
That's big.
In fact, this is maybe a little geeking out a little bit, but there's a technology, single sign-on technology. There's a lot of different providers that utilize this kind of technology, and what they do is they integrate with all these, like, whether you use Salesforce or QuickBooks or Microsoft, whatever you're using, they can actually integrate with every single platform for a singular sign-on experience. So that in the background, like, you sign it once and you're signing to everything.
You're in.
Now, a lot of times people think, well, isn't that a security risk in itself? And don't worry, there are ways to mitigate even that risk as you think about threat actors and whatnot. But what I would argue is the biggest issue is that a lot of what we find is a lot of IT companies, a lot of our competitors, a lot of people with whom I really do get along with, really good people. But the problem is that most of them kind of attack issues as a checkbox.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there is a checkbox to be checked. You need to make sure you have MFA. You need to make sure these things are done. However, it's an evolving process. And what we find out is when customers of ours aren't willing to engage in that process of, like, constantly evaluating and reevaluating, they're almost always incredibly inefficient.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And we're opening doors wide open too. I mean, it's just scary.
That is scary.
Yeah. Because what I would say too is there's a lot of people with whom I've worked with in the sense that I'm not a threat for a lot of people, for a lot of these threat actors you talk about. And all I say, man, is it only takes once. Mm-hmm. A lot of these small businesses, can you really, if you lose everything, can you really start over?
Like, a lot of times, no.
Yeah, what is the rate? Do you know the rate of companies that go out of business when they get ransomware?
No, I don't know that. Okay. I'm not sure what it is.
It's over 60%.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's small to medium-sized businesses.
Dang.
I won't speak for Fortune 500 companies, but when you think of SMBs, it is over 60%.
60%?
Now, a lot of those are really small. I'll be the first to say that, but...
And the sad part is, a lot of that, I mean, you can do so many things that we see in the cyber insurance market. It's human error is like the largest aspect of your threat and your open doors for these folks, where you can have the perfect systems up, but you have someone to click on that wrong email or do something that's not right and opens it wide open. So that's why any business we work with your clients, ask them if their business hasn't changed in the past 5 years. Of course it has. Everything has. And so that's why it's nice to have someone like Mainstreet IT.
Yeah, man.
On your side.
Yeah.
On your street.
Yes.
So I can hook you up.
Yeah, man, you got it.
We're watching these things. We're not checking a box, but we're helping you as, hey, we saw this. Yeah. We're going to change your program to make sure that you guys are good to go.
Yeah. And then how does your security and your whole process, how does that actually work back in the business plan? Like, that's one thing we're super passionate about is, like, people have business plans and they think that hey, what do we need to do to implement the latest security or technology? And what I say is like, you don't worry about that. You worry about your business plan, and then we'll just wrap technology and security around that, because people try to constrain too much of what technology does, and it constrains our whole business, and it's horrible. It's really bad to see.
And you try as a business owner to bootstrap it for so long.
Oh, yeah.
And then it just comes a point where it's the law of diminishing returns. And your time is spent better someplace else than trying to
I'm with you.
Make it work.
So one other question I did have is there ever a reason to not get cyber insurance? Like, obviously a lot of people are not buying, and for the most part, they're probably not getting attacked every single day. So is there ever a time really when there's maybe not a great reason to get cyber insurance?
With my professional insurance hat on, I have to say no.
Sure.
Because you have to recommend it, because when it does occur and you have an attack or something goes wrong, it's a bad day to say, oh, you said I didn't need this. Yeah. And so I think, no, on a large scale business, they can pay a huge amount for these premiums. We're talking Fortune 500, big companies. Yeah. And so there's a big spend, and also on the IT service side of things. And so there's a threat in our business of risk mitigation is, how do you minimize the risk and maximize your dollar? And so whether that's dealing with an IT service provider and saying, hey, I think I'm okay, I'll buy a smaller cyber insurance policy just in case something does happen, it's a backdrop. It's the same kind of analogy, like if you have a building and you insure your building, just because it has sprinklers doesn't mean you're going to take all the insurance off of it. Great, there's a nice safeguard there, but you're not going to say, you know what, no insurance needed, it's never going to happen. You're essentially just rolling the dice and hoping you don't land on whatever number that's bad.
Yeah. And like you said, it goes back to your core purpose earlier. You want to step in the gap. You guys do want to be there when things go wrong. And the worst possible thing is saying, looks like we can't do anything.
Yeah. And then they say, well, could I buy it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you could have. Yeah. Well, how much did it cost? Well, $200. They're like, are you kidding me?
So what you're trying to say is it's not unreasonable.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's not unreasonable. You're talking about the extreme cases of big Fortune 500 companies.
Totally.
And they have so much cash behind them anyways, it probably doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
But you're saying cyber insurance for most small businesses is affordable.
It would be more affordable than you think. Yes. I would say, depending on your size.
Yeah.
A few $1,000s maybe. On a small business, say it's 0.0025% of what the rate is. So you're buying $1 million, you're paying $2,500 a year for it.
Wow.
So
wow.
And of course you go bigger, it's larger than that.
Sure.
But yeah, so it's not as expensive as your automobile, your work comp, anything else. It'll be right in line with those.
Hey.
Yeah.
Good deal, man.
Yeah.
Anything else to offer to the whole conversation? I mean, again, you're in risk management. I'm in risk management, at least partially anyways. I think we both definitely wear a hat for sure.
Totally. It's fun to go alongside these businesses and help them and be their advocate in their support system.
Yeah.
And then when the time does come, when something does happen, you can be like, hey man, we did this right. We got you.
Yeah.
Like you're going to open tomorrow. You're not going out of business. Like 60% of them do.
Like that's wild.
It's crazy, dude.
Yeah. I really don't. There's a lot of ways to like get your stuff back, and it mind boggles me how poor setups that people have with their IT process. And
So work with people you like.
Yeah.
Work with people that seem like they're experts in the area they are working in, and trust them.
Awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate your time. I will post some information on how people can get in touch with you.
Great.
And so if you're looking for that, you can just check out the notes and
there we go
from there.
Heck yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man.
This was fun.
Maybe we'll have you back on again.
I like it. Let's do it.